Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, our guest is Amanda Ono. Amanda has spent her career learning to maximize a company's most valuable investment, its people. Boasting over 20 years of international experience in organizational development, HR consulting, and change management, she's implemented successful talent and leadership initiatives in 6 countries across 4 continents. You can currently find her at Resolver, a Kroll business and worldwide leader in defining risk intelligence, making her mark as both VP Customer Experience and VP People and Culture. For most of her professional life, Amanda has been on a mission to understand what makes highly effective organizations tick. As an undergraduate in psychology, she saw pioneering research on the effects of unconscious bias and racism in resume screening up close. After graduating, she honed her craft by tackling training and organizational development at talent management firms across Canada. Soon her skills were in such demand that invitations to implement leadership programs across the globe started to roll in, first in South Africa, followed by Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, and Singapore. Since joining the Resolver team in 2016, she's only expanded on her record of success, implementing processes and strategies that have enabled Resolver to scale by over 120%, expand into 4 countries, and acquire 3 companies. Amanda's efforts have led to being recognized as one of Canada's great places to work 6 years in a row. Despite her accolades, Amanda is determined to continue engaging, accelerating, and giving her colleagues at Resolver to deliver on the company's motto, aim big, be great, and be loved by customers. So without further delay, sit back, plug your earphones in, and let's jump right into this conversation with Amanda. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Awesome. All right. So I love your bio. I don't even know where to start, but let's start where you tell us. I know we've read, the formal background of who you are and where you are today, but we'd love for you to tell us, the audience and myself in your own words, a little bit about your journey and how it is that you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as you can hear, I had a non-linear career path, and I truly think that a lot of the opportunities I've had, both to lead teams and grow processes have been a result of that. So I started, as you said, I actually went into my undergrad wanting to be a clinician. I wanted to be a psychologist, and then I took abnormal psychology and didn't really know if that aligned with me long term, but taking organizational psychology really clicked. How do people, leaders and organizations work together to achieve results? So, I've had jobs in sales and marketing early in my career. I've worked in both the private as well as the not-for-profit sector. But the common thread that I really had across was, how do you get the most out of people? How do you maximize people's potential? And so it's been a great journey for me. I also had an opportunity to oversee the customer experience side of our business for about 2.5 years. And that includes both professional services, support, and learning operations. And so, I think from the range of opportunities I've had and just a little bit on my mindset where I'm pretty open, I think you focus on the skills and the work you want to do versus the title. I've had an incredible journey thus far and look forward to it continuing.
Awesome. Now, people is so important in a business. And of course, our podcast is focused on navigating the customer's experience. And we're all customers in everything that we do. I live by the motto that we're all here on this earth to serve each other. In everything we do, we serve each other, in our communities, in our schools with our children, at church, just everything you do, you're offering some level of service to someone. And so could you maybe share with us, being that you have so much experience developing people's skills and talents and working on teams where you've really been able to hone, the best out of people, what do you think are maybe, I would say, especially seeing that you have so much experience working with leadership teams across different continents and cultures, maybe you could share with us maybe 3 to 5 things that you think is critical for leaders to embrace and practice on a daily basis in order to really have successful teams in an organization?
Yeah, this is a great question. And so, I think when you start as a leader, there's a piece around what are your values? What do you care about as you grow your business or your organization? And I think that becomes the first foundation in terms of how you're going to grow the team. And so I think there's been this great movement over the past few years where people have really said, bring your authentic leadership style to work. I think it's an incredible movement because you can't be everything to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, you are who you are, and your company or your business is who you are. You're able to serve a certain customer base. You're able to, engage with your employee base a certain way. And so you really want to be rooted in that. I think employees are smart. They know that if they've been sold something in a recruiting process that's different when they show up to work, they might decide that they want to work somewhere else. So I think as leaders, it's very important to be really strong in what you believe in, because there's a role for everyone and a company for everyone. But being authentic and honest about it is so important. So I always say start from that. And certainly at Resolver, and as we continue to expand with Kroll, we have a deep value in the fact that employees are customers. They're one of the customers that we serve, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think service is a key part of how leaders become really successful. And I always say of people and culture teams, we exist to serve the employee base, and so we have to understand and learn from them and listen. And that's really why one of my values is that continued curiosity to understand how people operate and understand how I can continue to serve them. So that's I believe really, really fundamental.
Right.
I would say the second thing for leaders, just to give you a couple, is to really think about, who are you going to recruit into your organization? So once you know what your values are, how do you attract people that are going to align to those values? Again, there's a company for everyone, and having people, you can decide that you want to build a company that is extremely high performance, extremely metric driven. Well, there's people that are going to suit that environment, that are much more competitive and much more driven towards those metrics and goals. So making sure you have that alignment in the recruitment process is really critical. I would say the third thing that made us really successful is building good onboarding programs. So, I think I've always found it curious that companies invest a ton in recruiting great people and then sit them in front of a workstation or at their home office, and hopefully they have a laptop, hopefully they have credentials, hopefully they know what they're doing. But setting people up for success early is really, really important. One thing we did at Resolver is we really looked at how do you build an onboarding program for a professional services team that was servicing our customer base, and we were able to get people successful and fully utilized at around 4 to 5 months versus around 8 to 9 months. So when you're able to really drill in on those programs, this is sometimes where people think that, oh, it's just an HR program, or it's just something HR is asking me to do. But when you do it well, you can really start to generate revenue. And so I would say to leaders, have your values aligned, attract the right people, and then make sure you're onboarding them extremely well. Not only does it help with engagement at the employee level, because I genuinely think people want to get up and be successful. They don't want to get up and do a bad job. So it helps them be successful, but there's also real monetary gain that you can have when you build those programs well. So I could talk for a long time with that, but I would say those are the three right off the hop that I think if leaders do really well, they're going to create a really strong service culture within their organization.
Great. Now, apart from leaders, like the CEO and, the CFO and the CMO and all of the, the top level leaders in our organization, HR plays a very integral role in an organization. And sometimes, the name HR stands for human resources, which is the human, as the name suggests, the resources of the business that are human. Sometimes if I find that HR, like in an organization, there are very few organizations where I've interacted with the team members of the company and they feel so comfortable going to their human resource people. what are some, how could we change that? What are some ways that we could look for opportunities that HR can really play the role they're supposed to play? I mean, apart from the standard things like benefits and ensuring that the organization is providing the teams with all of the resources that they need to get the job done. I think there's more that HR can play in terms of really supporting the team members. And sometimes when you talk to employees, they feel like HR is not for them. Do you get that feeling sometimes when you work with organizations or your interactions?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is such a great question. So, I think one thing we were really thoughtful about, because when I joined the organization, I was the first hire to be within the function, and I was really specific because as a software company, very small software company, 90 people at the time when I joined, they're really afraid that HR was going to be seen as the police.
Yes.
The people that drove compliance, and you have to do this and don't step out of line. And there was a philosophical alignment that was really important to have with the leadership team. And honestly, even for me as a professional, I want to join an organization where, HR is seen as strategic versus administrative. And so, we were very thoughtful. We were an early maturity team. And so we called ourselves the talent team. Because we want to sit where, be thought of as, holding talent in the organization and enabling them to be successful. We've since broadened and evolved, and now we use the term people and culture, which I think is a bigger reflection. But, I think there's a philosophical approach that if an organization, where do you sit on the spectrum as HR, as administrative versus strategic? And so I think if you're part of an organization where HR is seen as strategic, you're probably really empowered to build programs that, think of employees through an employee life cycle, much like we think of a customer life cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
You acquire, you onboard, you retain, you land and expand. Same thing as you think about the employee journey. And so I think, if you're part of an organization where you're, a little bit more on the strategic side, I think you're able to build some of those programs. I think it's a sliding scale. I don't think there's any organization where you necessarily are sitting at, hard either ends of that spectrum. But because certainly there's a bunch of stuff in HR that is administrative. You've got to administer benefits, and you've got to, make sure paperwork is done. That's super critical to a well-run people and culture organization. But I think it's just making sure that you work with leadership that, truly sees people as the most significant investment they're going to make. Most companies, if you're a knowledge-based organization, you probably spend between 60 to 80% of your operating budget on people. So if you don't view it as strategic, you're really going to miss out on the opportunity to grow your business. And so I think it's just, how does the organization think about it? I think, I've always believed that change and success is rooted in results. So I don't think you can necessarily change everything all at once, but if you change a really small thing early and you get success, the rest of the leaders in the organization will say, hey, maybe HR isn't as administrative as I thought it was. Maybe it could do more. And maybe I should be relying on them to consult with the business. So I think it's got to kind of work both ways. There's a philosophical piece where you want your leadership to buy into, but it's also build programs that are successful, because then you're going to be able to do a lot more.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right. Thank you for sharing, Amanda. Now, could you also share with us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely can't live without in your business?
So for me personally, it's Asana, which is a task management and project management tool. We are a relatively flat organization, and we do a lot of cross collaboration. And so being able to have teams from, product, people and culture, engineering, marketing, product marketing, see one view of how they have to collaborate and work together and commit to timelines, I think is, a total game changer in terms of how we're able to manage accountability and push things forward. I think most organizations, don't necessarily have a ton of maturity when it comes to project management or program management. I know certainly that was a huge skill set I learned in my time at Resolver. And so I think any tool that makes that faster, especially in a distributed world where you can't always just rock up to someone's desk and say, oh, hey, did you finish that for me? I think having that tool has really allowed for us to still deliver results and manage accountability and, have a shared collaboration space. So we're big Asana users, and I'm a huge fan.
Amazing. All right. Thank you for sharing. So we'll have the link to Asana in the show notes of this episode. Could you also share with us, Amanda, what are some books that you have read that you believe have had the biggest impact with you? Maybe one or two you could share with us. Could be a book that you read a very long time ago, or even one that you read recently, but it really has impacted you.
Yeah, so I just reread John Cotter's Leading Change because I think, change and change leadership is a huge part of how leaders have to continue to push their organizations to be innovative and to continuously improve. And so, he has a breadth of research and, a ton of really good nuggets in there, which I've really, really appreciated and I think are great for me as a leader. And then I'm just a huge Brene Brown fan, Daring Greatly. So that was a little bit more on a personal level. But I think it was really informative for me. And I think, part of the hard work of being a leader is looking inside. It's not always pretty in there, but it's what's going to make you better to serve your employees and your customers is looking inside and asking yourself the hard questions. And so those are ones that I often recommend to people. They're very, very topical for me and have really helped me advance and continue to challenge myself in the way I lead.
Amazing. I love Brene Brown. I think her content is truly amazing. And she actually has a video that I found a couple of years ago on the difference between empathy and sympathy that she did at a TED Talk that I thought was really, really good, because I think a lot of people, just really mix up the difference between being empathetic versus being sympathetic. And sometimes even the words that we use sends a signal of sympathy rather than one of empathy.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I think the work she's done on empathy has really, especially as it relates to the workplace, she's done an incredible job with that. For us, as I've built various programs on the employee side and on the customer side, I always think about, ensuring that we're rooted in empathy, because at the end of the day, understanding each other and, supporting each other to achieve things is really how we're going to get results. So I would say it's extremely central to how I've had an opportunity to build things. And I think for many companies, empathy is at the root of how you are going to be in service of both your employees and your customers.
Indeed. All right. Now, Amanda, could you also share with us what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something you're working on to develop yourself or your people.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been recently, Resolver was acquired in the spring of this year by Kroll, which is a professional services company. And Resolver, as well as several other technology companies, are going to be the digital arm of Kroll, so Kroll Digital Services. So I was very fortunate to be given the opportunity to step in as the Chief Human Resource Officer for that role. Again, going back to my point about, the HR title, but, that's how they level them. So that's fine. But yeah, so, as a business unit that's emerging, that's going to be digital first inside a company, I've been given the very tall order to work with the team on, how do we form a great culture within a digital first business unit? What does that look like? How do you integrate these companies that have slightly different cultures, but still want to achieve great things through technology for a vast array of customers around the world? So it's a very recent shift. So it's really exciting, lots of work ahead. But I think, I've realized in my career, I like building stuff. I have a value around getting to build stuff and getting to test and pilot things. And so that's the next chapter for me. So I'm really excited for that.
Awesome. So when you were talking just now in terms of your new role and using technology, it piqued my interest to ask another question as it relates to human resources and technology. Maybe could you share with us one or two benefits of HR or the people arm of the business actually using technology to enhance the experience that employees have in the organization? How can technology help that?
Yeah, I think, employees, especially over the past 10 to 15 years, we're such a tech first society, especially in North America, but globally. And so employees look at how they engage with their employers like they would as consumers. And so, they are internal customers. They are consumers of processes and programs that any organization is going to run. And so being tech enabled is super important. I think making it easy for people to update their employment records, and it's not a piece of paper, but they can do it on their mobile. I think being able to do things like, a performance review process through a technology that is fast and easy to do, and again, potentially mobile enabled, super important. I think technology can help enable most things. I always say that technology doesn't solve the process, it just makes the process faster. So I think what some people try to do is they say, okay, finally I've got some budget, I'm going to put in a technology, which is great, it's wonderful. Certainly I've worked with various organizations that were super paper-based, which becomes a barrier for employees to engage with things like performance conversations. And so, again, the more tech-enabled you can make it, the better. But the hard work is to actually just step back and say, what do we want this to look like? What are we trying to drive as the result? And then let's make sure the technology makes that true for us. So I think technology has a wonderful capability to drive efficiency, it especially drives reporting because it makes it really easy for all information to be in one spot. But the hard work of the leadership team is to step back and to say, what do we actually want to achieve? Let's draw out a process that makes sense, and then let's enable it through technology. I think sometimes people go the other way, and I've seen it the other way, and it ends up being a major challenge because, at the end of the day, the process has to be good. It has to be simple for employees. To your point earlier about employees being customers, we as a society now really have a high bar for things being easy, for it being a few clicks, for it being enabled by technology. And so if organizations are thinking about their employee base as not thinking differently when it comes to HR tech and how they interface with HR tech, they're probably going to have people that kind of moan and groan about the stuff they have to do on paper or an Excel spreadsheet or anything like that. So huge fan. Think there's lots of work to be done to make it really effective, but I think it, certainly the reality of a pandemic and being, most companies now having some form of distributed work team makes it, doubly important to what it was 3 years ago. But that's definitely a frontier for people to make sure they're crossing to ensure they're serving their employee base.
Yeah, wow. You said 3 years ago, totally unrelated to what you're talking about. And I just realized, wow. January, February makes it 3 years since we've been in this pandemic.
So
what?
Wild. and honestly, I think, I'm an optimist by design. And I think one of the best outcomes from COVID for employees specifically and employers is twofold. One, it made us totally rethink if employees need to be in the office full time. And there's some jobs where that's still true, but there's many companies, Resolver and Kroll Digital include it, where, you can be hybrid. And so I think, shifting that narrative was we marked the 3-year anniversary of that win for employees. And I think the second thing is people became a lot more open about talking about mental health and the impacts of mental health because the wall between work and home was just shattered for most of us. And so I think, I've certainly within our employee base noticed a difference in the courage to have those conversations and to bring more vulnerability to work. I've seen that shift, and I think it's a positive one because it allows us to understand what people are going through and how we might support them moving forward. So yeah, 3 years in, lots of stuff that I'm sure we'd like to go back in time on, but we're here, we're what we have. And I certainly think from an employee perspective, there's been some great wins. And I hope now what most companies are able to do is to say, okay, let's take what we've learned and let's make the offering and how we serve our customer or our employee base even better.
Yeah. Amazing. All right, Amanda. So could you all tell our listeners as well, they have tapped into this episode. They're really intrigued with all of the content and, amazing things that you've shared with us. And so they would like to know a little bit more about you, probably follow you on your journey, connect with you. Where can they find you online?
Yeah, the best place to find me is just to follow me on LinkedIn. I'm going to be starting to post a little bit more thought leadership, but yeah, that's definitely the space I live. I'm on other social media, but that's the one that I find I spend the most time on, probably because I still have a little bit of a recruiter hat on occasionally. So you're always looking to see what's happening in the market. But yeah, that's the best place to find me, and just under Amanda Ono.
Okay, awesome. Now, before we wrap our episodes up, we always like to ask our guests, do you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, you'll tend to revert to this quote? If for any reason you get derailed or you get off track, and the quote kind of helps to get you back on track and kind of refocus you on what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think this one needs to get printed on a T-shirt for me, because it's one my granny told me when I was little, and it's a constant on repeat for me, especially during COVID. But I think as you continue to evolve, is just control what you can control. There's so many things that are dependent and you can't really influence, but if you really narrow focus on the things that you can move, even on days where, you're not feeling the best, you have control to go out and get some fresh air and go for a walk and, get some perspective. You have control of, engaging with very kind relationships with people on your team. You have control to just kind of laugh off maybe that colleague that always is a little bit harsh on a call. So that's my T-shirt. Probably should wear it daily. Maybe actually next time I pop onto a Zoom call with my team, I should have that on a T-shirt. I think they'd probably like that. But yeah, that's definitely mine. Control what you can control.
Control what you can control. Love it. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for hopping on to our podcast, Navigating the Customer Experience, sharing all of these great insights and nuggets as it relates to, people and culture, building strong teams, the importance of leadership, and some of the key things that leaders need to do in order to build successful teams and great cultures. And, just, sharing with us based on your journey, your experiences that you've had, and allowing our listeners to really tap into what are some ways that they can explore to really navigate and create great success. We're embarking on a new calendar year, lots of great opportunities that we may not have been able to tap into in 2022, and those doors may still be open in 2023. So we really appreciate you sharing this great content with us today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Just want to remind our listeners, please feel free to follow us on Facebook at Navigating the Customer Experience Community, and you can also follow us on Twitter at Navigating CX. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We also have a new book available on Amazon, The ABCs of a Fantastic Customer Experience. It's available in ebook and paperback. So if you want to increase revenue in your organization, build a stronger service culture, and create employees or develop employees who are really mastering service delivery in your business, you need to grab a copy of this book. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.